This is Procurement and Supply Chain Live. And next up, we've got a fireside chat discussing supply chain transformation. Joining me today are Donna Kunzler, Head of Procurement, Process Excellence and Digital Transformation, Robotics and Discrete Automation at ABB. Donna is a process improvement leader with more than 2 decades of professional experience. She's spent most of her career working for Big Four accounting firms and multinational companies globally. Her current scope includes supply chain process governance and digital enablement. Donna has a postgraduate degree in strategy and innovation from the University of Oxford, is a certified public accountant, certified information systems auditor, certified MSP program manager, and also somehow finds the time to be an award-winning author of an Amazon bestseller self-help book on living and thriving abroad. Ben Godfrey is Vice President Procurement, Raw Material and Forming at Rolls-Royce. Ben is an expert in procurement, operations and supply chain and has bought everything on an airplane engine. His diverse experience include breakthrough multi-billion-dollar digital sourcing events, leading cost-out control towers, managing the biggest supplier relationships in aerospace, as well as responding to acute crises and improving large operational supply chains through lean production systems. So welcome, Donna and Ben.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Ben.
Hi there. Right now, we're going to dive straight in there because I've spent quite a bit of time introducing you both. Now, today, we're going to be talking about supply chain transformation. So I suppose the first question should really be, why do supply chains need to transform? Donna, what's your take on that?
It's a funny question. I think the question is more when are they transforming and how fast, right? Because companies are losing lots of money already with this supply chain disruption. And what we're seeing is, some companies still have antiquated processes, there's lack of visibility, and even now running short of people. So we really have to be fast in making our processes agile and resilient so we can recover from this crisis.
And Ben, why do they need to transform?
I think you look at it as in procurement supply chain, you sit on top of a very complex infrastructure. You take a jet engine, that's what I know best. It's a really complex piece of kit, and the supply chain is then multi-layers and complex too. So if you can imagine that complexity, and all of the people in this field have their own version of that complexity, we can't sit still. We have to deliver improvements, whether that's quality, cost, delivery. So we're in a constant, in my view, we're in a constant period of transformation. Change is the only constant that we see in supply chain. So we have to be on top of that and ahead of that.
Absolutely. And, the title of this event is the Risk and Resilience Conference. And we've certainly faced plenty of that in the last couple of years. Donna, what do you think, turning to you first, what do you think are the key challenges faced by organizations today in their transformation journey?
I think first one is prioritization, because, a lot of the things that we want to happen or we need yesterday. So companies have this challenge of, okay, what do I do first? Right? And there's a lot of competing demands. So how do you bridge that is you go towards the classic prioritization matrix of, okay, what is the impact of this change? How complex is it, or how hard is it to implement, and how is it aligned to the overall strategy of the company? So that's one prioritization. The second one, I think, is, with lots of new technologies like AI and ML, there's a lack of understanding of what these technologies really are capable of, or matching it with the use cases that really companies can benefit out of them. And also the understanding of what are the dependencies and prerequisites when you actually implement these technologies, such as, data quality. For instance, ML relies a lot on data. So do you actually have the data to even use this technology? How ready is your organization for it? What will you do afterwards? So also the frameworks. Do you have the right framework in place, let's say for risk management, right? So how do you actually mitigate or manage the risk? How granular do you want to get? So there's that understanding. And then lastly is the overall shareholder buy-in and the change management process. So with the new technologies as well that you will implement, it will really drastically change the way people work. And at all levels, they should understand, the value of the initiatives that you will implement has to be articulated very well and understood by everyone in different levels in their own perspective, because otherwise it will not work. Maybe you're trying to put in a collaborative robot and they don't understand or fully appreciate that it's collaborative rather than taking over their work. So I think those are the key challenges at the moment.
Okay, and Ben, I mean, your take on this as well. I mean, what are the key challenges that you're facing specifically at Rolls-Royce, I suppose, but also, that's relevant to our wider audience?
Yeah, I was nodding along as Donna was talking there. I think you start at the beginning, the sort of the prioritization, the purpose of the transformation. The data piece was very much resonating with me. So, that level of complexity that you have in your repositories of your data, the quality of your data is the first thing to understand. There's lots of cool things you can do once your data is clean and organized. Getting to that point is often the first and the biggest step, I think. I mean, outside of that, change is change. That's people. That's why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? Where are the quick wins that you can demonstrate, and how can you build that momentum? So I think there's a people element to it. I also think if you bring that back to that physical supply chain, so your Rolls-Royce question, there's a huge amount of competing pressures that are changing very rapidly. I sort of check myself week to week, month to month, and things that I held to be long held beliefs, long held truths are changing. There are things that I never thought I would see, and they seem to be coming week for week, those sort of black swan events. So the ability to be resilient and agile to those changes are hugely enabled by the technologies, but you've got to get that first understanding of the data quality, the reason why for your people, and then a very structured program to deliver.
Okay, great. And also, Donna mentioned there, she talked about AI and machine learning a bit. Ben, there's lots of talk about this right now. I mean, how can it be used to transform supply chains? Or can you give us some examples of how you're utilizing AI and ML?
Yeah, so we have actually invested quite heavily at this in Rolls-Royce. We have a new fledgling business unit called the R2 factory. They've just opened some very swanky offices in London, actually. And that's all about being able to leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning at scale. So things that have started at Rolls-Royce, and we've got some neat examples which I will come to, but we're very much offering that service now to the wider world in a very collaborative fashion. I mean, some of our examples have been as wide-ranging as being able to redesign forgings in common envelopes. So for those people that work with big chunks of metal like me, that's a hugely powerful thing to be able to do that digitally rather than sort of designing each of them separately and not understanding the interactions. And we've been able to start to take that idea, so the digital twin of a part, the digital twin of a factory, and what we're now exploring is, how can you digitize and twin that supply chain to allow you to optimize and drive those efficiency improvements.
And so, Donna, maybe because you raised the topic of AI and machine learning as well, how are you guys using that at ABB?
I mean, I can't speak for the company itself, but from what I've seen of examples in general is example in supplier selection. If you are able to, especially for really big companies, you have silos everywhere where you can connect all the data and be able to compare, you say, prices of suppliers in the different systems, right? So that's a lot of data that the ML can actually look at, or AI, and select the best supplier for what you're looking for. And the other part is also on predictive costing, right? Or predicting the cost of a certain commodity. You can use machine learning for that based on the fluctuations in the prices. I mean, those are the common things that I would see. But then again, it's again a lot of the data. So what data do you need, internal and external, to make it work?
Yeah. We definitely keep coming back to data here, don't we? Now, data is obviously crucial, and technology as well. Also, visibility in the supply chain, and technology is a way that we can increase that visibility as well. But how important is visibility, Ben, for you?
Yeah, I mean it's a crucial thing. Scott, I operate at the bottom end of the supply chain. Right from sort of getting the material out of the ground. So that can be 2 or 3 layers away from our executive system. Knowing what's happening there, which is months, years away from the point of delivery of the part, being able to make that visible is hugely powerful. It allows you to make decisions. It allows you to drive efficiency and improvements that you wouldn't think were possible, and it allows you to get ahead of some of those curves. I think what I'm seeing is that you have some decisions to make in your organization. So do you look for a big bang implementation? Do you partner and collaborate with somebody that can do that for you? The question of the data will inevitably come up. Or do you look to build a network of more bespoke offerings, sort of tapping into good practice with various platforms? Because there are a huge number of providers out there now purporting to provide these services, some of which are synthetic data. So they are, very big data pools, and you can draw some useful but not accurate conclusions. And then there are others that will work very deeply with you to get to a real representation of your supply chain, albeit that is much more time consuming and much more bespoke work, as you would expect. And it's perhaps a combination of the two that we're finding most useful, but there are choices to be made there.
Okay, and same question to you, Donna, as well. How important is visibility in the supply chain?
Very important, I would say. I mean, in every step of the way, right? Because example, if a customer orders something, you should be able to commit to a date. So do you even know that you can meet what you're promising, depending on your supply chain? Supply chain is typically the big dependency there when there's an order. And with the supply disruptions right now and the lead times, how they're very unpredictable. So do you have the tools to help you to be able to bridge that and make a good guesstimate, as we say, right? So and with that also the demand planning, right? And traceability of where the product is at every stage of the manufacturing process is crucial. So when you're getting follow-ups now with the customer, where is my order? Are you able to answer accurately on where it is and how long more it needs to be in that factory or until it's delivered to their door? And another important aspect that's coming up is really ESG and sustainability, right? Because now there will be more demands from governments on the regulatory side. So what data do you have now? How visible is that data now that you can actually disclose and report, monitor even to meet those requirements?
Okay, well, you went down the S word there of sustainability, and I know that's something that's obviously very close to Ben's heart as well. So Ben, we could talk about this all day, but we've only got a few minutes. Why don't you give us a brief overview of how important and significant sustainability is in the supply chain right now?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Scott. Sustainability is rising up everybody's agenda. I mean that's I think a statement of fact. That's coming about because I think increasingly individuals, consumers are interested in and bothered about all of those topics with good reason, and companies have to respond to that. But it also points to the allocation of capital. You're starting to see that. You're starting to see legal changes, legislative changes. When you're in a big business that kind of makes things for a living and makes things that have an impact and a footprint to the world, you have to take that topic seriously. But increasingly, people are interested in that topic. Our employees, our customers. It's something that is number one, number two, number three on most agendas in a business meeting. So I think you have to respond to those forces, and by responding to those, you do get to this topic that things are complex, things are difficult to see, and the digital kind of enablement technologies out there has to complement, the buyer or the sustainability professional. And those guys have a very difficult job to do, whichever spectrum you look at it, whether that's the more commercial angle as a buyer, where you're looking to drive quality, cost, delivery, all those performance factors. And then you've got this big new thing perhaps to you that says, by the way, you need to be sustainable. And by the way, in 5 years' time, this law is going to change and you need to be on the right side of it. So you need to be able to complement that individual to do their job. You put the hat on of the sustainability professional that reports to the board and quite rightly says, so we've made some big, hairy commitments to the outside world. Where are we? Great question. I'm sure there's lots of head scratching, in answer to that question, and lots of companies therefore wrestle with, well, how do we kind of follow up on those commitments? How do we make visible the things that we need to do, and in a way that's robust? I'd be interested in Donna's take on this as an accounting professional. I believe that those sustainability commitments will become codified in law. I think they'll become audited. By when? And are we ready for that as an industry and as a group of professionals?
Mm-hmm.
Donna.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, that's why they say probably one of the strategies really is you have to embed it in your processes, in your operations, because it cannot happen after the fact. You're too late, right? And if you're committing into something, you have to plant the seeds or start planting the seeds now so you can watch them grow and you'll be able to monitor and report later on. So embed it in the different processes.
Yeah. Okay. And moving on, another hot topic in business right now, and you talked there about, planting the seeds and watching them grow, which sort of brings me on nicely to talk about talent and skills shortages and the so-called great resignation that we hear about so much right now. So, Donna, how important is attracting and also retaining key talent?
Very important. We're in a crisis situation. Supply chain is in a crisis situation. You have to really make it, how do you now attract people, in despite the fact that it's a crazy world at the moment, right? So it's very important to link it to purpose. People will feel that they are contributing to the goal, to the purpose. So they cannot be too far away. They have to know that they contribute themselves in the overall, let's say, in the sustainability targets, or the specific ESG, environmental, or even the societal goals, right? Retaining is another thing. So how do you retain with the supply chain transformation that's happening? It's very important to upskill the people. Know that they're also, if your infrastructure, your whole system is being upgraded, they also have to be upgraded. They don't stay where they are. They have to keep up with the change as well. So I think that's a very important component. And in the end, it's like, what is their path, right? Some of the work will drastically change. So what does it mean from them? So before, they're doing manual labor and then suddenly they are reviewing data. So what then is their progression path? What's the kind of competency framework that will be required of them in the end?
Yeah. And Ben, I know we've spoken previously about the importance of purpose, for instance. What's your take on how to attract and retain this talent?
Yeah, again, thanks for the question, Scott. I mean, I think if I could maybe start with a little bit of a hypothesis, the world, for as long as I guess any of us can think about, has been kind of obsessed with growth, in all factors, whether that's GDP or the S&P index, whatever that may be. I guess the hypothesis is maybe the world is starting to reach a different paradigm where growth alone is not the only thing that we can measure by. Perhaps it is a more social context that we need to increasingly consider when you think about the next generation of individuals and talents coming into a business. To Donna's point on purpose, when I support the events that are bringing people into Rolls-Royce, very much so, those conversations are different. Whether that's a digital first mindset or a home working first mindset. I spend a day a week in the office now versus 5 days a week in the office, and I personally would never go back. there are people coming into the workforce now that have never been into the office and see perhaps no need to. So I think you need to take a look at systems in your organization about, simple things about how you onboard people, what that experience looks like as an example, all the way through to what does this company do? And it can't be we just make quarterly returns, I believe, in the future. And I think that will drive, I guess, a degree of conflict, both with individuals, some people that may have had 30 years in a workplace that's not been digital first, with people that has coming in have never known any different. I think that's something you have to reflect on and very consciously think about to attract and retain the right talent going forward.
Okay, yeah, really interesting point there. Okay, finally, Donna, let's look into our crystal ball and look into the future as much as we can. We know that the future is very unpredictable right now. But what are your predictions for supply chain and supply chain transformation in 2022 and beyond?
I think it's not very different from last year. We are still, I believe we're still in the crisis mode and we haven't recovered yet. So there's still 4 key themes. First is resilience and agility, right? So we still have to find ways of how we can recover quite quickly from the crisis. Next is risk management. How do we prevent it from happening again? How can we manage the risks more effectively? And third is maximizing returns will always be there. Despite the pandemic, despite the war that's happening, we and even more so because of them happening, we have to look for more ways on how we can minimize the spend, right, or achieve our spend targets. Be more creative with, let's say, apply design to cost models because we want to be smarter with our design so we were not impacted by the shortage. And finally, again, the responsibility part, which is the ESG and sustainability, because that's still evolving and will continue to evolve and have more regulatory requirements in the future. So, and I think overall as well is, we're in industry 4.0. It's really slowly going towards 5.0, where it's more collaborative. So with the all robotics and humans, before it's more like automation, but now we think of, okay, it has to be balanced. Now we have to find the right balance in a sustainable way. So it's really moving towards that.
Okay, and Ben, final question to you there. Same question. What does the immediate future hold in terms of supply chain?
I think Donna said it very, very well, but I'll try to go with my words there. So I think there will be continued disruption. I think that will create opportunities for doing things differently. I think we'll see some competing infrastructures. So I think we'll see that starting to settle down into some good practice and some examples that we can learn from. And I think that will mean that the role of procurement and supply professionals will only increase in terms of the importance to the companies that they work in. I think you will therefore see those procurement professionals move very much to, as Donna was talking about, in terms of value generation, the cost savings that we're all driven for, the performance improvements in our supply chain, but much more towards what's the company's purpose, how do we support there, how do we act as the lens to the external world into a company, because that's what we do in procurement roles. It is very much that kind of business partnering and providing that insight. I think we will be targeted to, and I think that's something that's around us now, but increasingly those that will kind of come through these challenging periods successfully will take that mindset. I think we will, as I said, we'll see that sort of network of solutions and providers perhaps starting to settle down a little bit, but I think it's still got a period of growth first, and then we may perhaps land in a period where that's a little more stable and we can start to pick good practices and how those things knit together in our supply chains.
Okay, well, look, I'm sure that everyone watching this will be absolutely looking for a bit more stability moving forward. And I'm sure they've really enjoyed your insights today as well. So that's all we've got time for now. But thank you to Donna and to Ben for joining us today.
Thank you.
And remember, you can reach out to Donna and Ben directly through the event app, Brella. Go there and you can ask questions directly to all of our speakers, to all of our attendees as well. It's a great networking opportunity. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with the next session.